Welcome to Paranormal Pages. Let's get straight into the true scary stories. Story 1. The Whispering Echo. It had been 3 years since the tragic accident that claimed my wife, Emily. The memory of that night still haunted me, the screeching tires, the deafening crash, and the silence that followed. Life had become a monotonous blur of work and sleepless nights. I had convinced myself that time would heal the wound, but the gaping void Emily left behind only seemed to grow larger with each passing day. One late October evening, as the wind howled outside my small, dimly lit apartment, I found myself sitting alone on the couch. The flickering shadows cast by the TV added an eerie ambience to the already oppressive silence. My phone rang, its sudden intrusion causing me to jump. Glancing at the screen, I saw an unknown number. Hesitant but curious, I answered. "Hello?" I said, my voice wavering slightly. "Hi, honey." "It's me," came the reply, clear and familiar. My heart stopped. It was Emily's voice. The same soft, comforting tone that used to lull me to sleep. But it couldn't be her. She was gone. "Who is this?" I demanded, my grip tightening on the phone. "This isn't funny." "It's me, love. Emily." "I miss you," the voice continued, now tinged with sadness. My mind raced, trying to make sense of what I was hearing. It had to be a cruel prank, but how could someone mimic her voice so perfectly? "Emily's dead," I whispered, more to myself than to the caller. "Whoever you are, stop this now." "I know it's hard to believe," the voice persisted, "but it's really me. I need your help, Peter. Please, come to the house." Our old house had been left abandoned since the accident. I couldn't bring myself to sell it, nor could I face the memories trapped within its walls. The thought of returning there now, spurred by this disturbing call, filled me with a sense of dread. Yet, a part of me clung to the hope that this might somehow be real. Against my better judgment, I decided to go. I grabbed my coat and keys, the phone call still echoing in my mind. As I drove through the dark, winding streets, the memories of our life together flooded back. Emily's laughter, our plans for the future, the life we were supposed to have. Each memory cut deeper, fueling my determination to find out the truth. The house stood ominously at the end of the street, its silhouette barely visible against the moonlit sky. I parked the car and sat there for a moment, staring at the front door. My heart pounded in my chest, a mix of fear and anticipation. I took a deep breath, got out of the car, and walked up the path. As I stepped inside, the air felt colder than it should have. The familiar creak of the floorboards under my feet brought a rush of nostalgia and sorrow. The house was just as we had left it, frozen in time. I called out her name, my voice echoing through the empty rooms. "Emily? Are you here?" I waited, but there was no response. Just as I was about to give up and leave, the phone rang again. This time, the sound seemed to come from upstairs. I hesitated, then followed the noise, each step growing heavier with trepidation. Reaching our bedroom, I saw the phone lying on the bed, its screen lit up with the same unknown number. I picked it up and answered, my hand trembling. "Peter, you made it," the voice said, and this time it was accompanied by a faint sob. "Thank you. I need you to find something for me. It's in the attic. Hey, subscribe for more scary stories." My pulse quickened as I stood at the base of the attic stairs, the wooden ladder creaking under my weight as I pulled it down. The attic had always been a place of mystery, even when Emily was alive. We rarely ventured up there, only to store old memories in dusty boxes. Now, it seemed the darkness held secrets far more sinister. I climbed the ladder, each rung feeling colder than the last. The musty air of the attic greeted me, filled with the scent of forgotten times. My flashlight cut through the gloom, revealing cobwebs and stacks of boxes. I swept the light across the space, searching for anything that might stand out. "Emily?" I called softly, my voice barely more than a whisper. The only response was the creak of the house settling. I pushed forward, my eyes scanning for any clue. Suddenly, my beam fell upon a small, ornate box tucked away in a corner, almost hidden beneath an old quilt. I knelt down and reached for the box, my fingers trembling. It was surprisingly heavy, and as I opened it, I was greeted by a collection of photographs and letters. Among them was a leather-bound journal, its pages yellowed with age. I opened the journal, recognizing Emily's handwriting instantly. "Dear Peter," the first entry began. "If you are reading this, then something unimaginable has happened. There are things I never told you, things I never wanted you to know." My heart sank as I continued reading. Emily had written about her family history, a legacy intertwined with the supernatural. She described a curse, a dark force that had plagued her ancestors for generations. "I thought I could escape it," she wrote. "But now I fear it has found me. And I fear it will find you too, Peter." My hand shook as I read the final entry, dated just days before her death. "If I am gone, you must protect yourself. Find the locket. It holds the key." The locket. I had seen it before, a delicate silver piece she always wore around her neck. But where was it now? The memory of the accident surged back, the twisted wreckage, her lifeless body. I had never thought to look for it among her belongings. Determined to uncover the truth, I searched the attic more thoroughly, but the locket was nowhere to be found. Defeated, I descended the ladder, the journal clutched tightly in my hand. The house felt even colder now, as if it had absorbed the fear and sorrow from Emily's words. I returned to the bedroom, the phone still lying on the bed. I picked it up, my mind racing with questions. "I found the journal," I said, hoping the voice would respond. "But the locket is missing." "You need to find it, Peter," the voice replied, more urgent than before. "Without it, I cannot protect you. Look in the basement. There are things you need to see." The basement was the one place I had avoided since her death. The shadows seemed deeper there, the darkness more suffocating. But I had come this far, and there was no turning back now. I made my way downstairs, the creaking of the steps echoing through the silent house. As I reached the basement door, I hesitated. The air grew colder, the sense of foreboding stronger. I steeled myself and opened the door, the stairs descending into pitch blackness. My flashlight flickered, and for a moment, I thought it would go out completely. But it held steady, and I took a deep breath before stepping into the abyss. The basement was a maze of old furniture and storage boxes, the air thick with dust. My flashlight caught glimpses of objects long forgotten, but nothing that seemed out of place. Then, in the far corner, I saw it. A small, wooden chest, partially covered by a tattered blanket. I approached the chest, my heartbeat echoing in my ears. As I lifted the blanket, a chill ran down my spine. The chest was locked, but I noticed a keyhole that matched the intricate design of the locket. This had to be it. I just needed to find the locket, and maybe, just maybe, I could unlock the secrets that had haunted Emily, and now, me. I searched every nook and cranny of the basement, but the locket remained elusive. Frustrated and exhausted, I sat down on an old wooden stool, trying to gather my thoughts. The basement was suffocatingly silent, except for the faint sound of the wind howling outside. I knew I had to think of somewhere else the locket might be. Somewhere Emily might have hidden it for safekeeping. My thoughts drifted back to our happier times together. Emily always had a knack for hiding things in plain sight, disguising them as everyday objects. With renewed determination, I made my way back upstairs, mentally revisiting every corner of the house. Then it struck me, the old grandfather clock in the living room. Emily loved that clock, often joking that it held the secrets of time itself. I approached the clock, its pendulum swinging methodically. Opening the small door at the base, I rummaged through the dust-covered gears and weights. My heart leaped as my fingers brushed against something cold and metallic. Pulling it out, I found the locket, its silver surface tarnished but intact. I held it up, the intricate design glinting faintly in the dim light. With the locket in hand, I returned to the basement, feeling both apprehensive and hopeful. The chest awaited me, its lock an enigma I was now equipped to solve. I inserted the locket's tiny key into the keyhole and turned it with a click. The lid creaked open, revealing its contents, a collection of letters, old photographs, and a small, ornate dagger. I carefully picked up one of the letters, its paper fragile with age. It was addressed to Emily from her grandmother, detailing the history of the curse that plagued their family. Each generation, it seemed, had faced a malevolent spirit that sought to claim their lives. The dagger, I read, was a protective talisman meant to ward off the spirit if used correctly. The phone rang again, startling me. I grabbed it, half expecting Emily's voice. But this time, the voice was different, darker, more sinister. "You think you can stop me with that?" it hissed. "You have no idea what you're dealing with." "Who are you?" I demanded, fear creeping into my voice. "What do you want?" "I am the curse," the voice replied, a chilling laugh echoing through the line. "And now, I want you." The line went dead, leaving me in a silence more oppressive than before. My mind raced. I needed to understand the full extent of what I was up against. I returned to the letters, reading through them with a desperate urgency. Each one painted a more vivid picture of the horrors faced by Emily's ancestors. One letter caught my eye, written by Emily herself shortly before her death. "Peter," it began, "if you are reading this, it means the curse has claimed me. I'm so sorry I couldn't protect you. The spirit feeds on fear and despair. The locket and the dagger together can weaken it, but only if used by someone it cannot scare. You must find the strength within you. Remember, love is stronger than fear." Her words filled me with a new sense of resolve. I knew what I had to do. Armed with the locket and the dagger, I needed to confront the spirit. It thrived on my fear, and I had to face it without letting terror consume me. I ascended the basement stairs, the house feeling more oppressive with each step. The air grew colder, and I felt a malevolent presence closing in. I made my way to the living room, the dagger clenched in one hand, the locket in the other. The shadows seemed to move, the darkness deepening around me. "Show yourself," I shouted, my voice trembling slightly but growing stronger. "I'm not afraid of you." The room seemed to shudder, and a figure began to materialize before me. It was a spectral form, twisted and grotesque, its eyes burning with a malevolent fire. The temperature plummeted, and I felt the weight of its presence pressing down on me. "You should be," it snarled, advancing towards me. But I stood my ground, clutching the dagger tightly. Emily's words echoed in my mind, "Love is stronger than fear." With a steady hand, I held up the locket and the dagger, focusing on the love I had for Emily and the strength she believed I had. The spirit hesitated, its form flickering as if destabilized. This was my moment. I lunged forward, the dagger aimed at the heart of the apparition. It let out a deafening screech as the blade made contact, its form dissipating into a swirl of shadows. The room fell silent, the oppressive weight lifting instantly. But just as I began to feel a sense of victory, the phone rang again. The phone's ring pierced the silence, sending a shiver down my spine. I hesitated before answering, half expecting the voice of the malevolent spirit to taunt me once more. Instead, it was Emily's voice, softer now, almost relieved. "Peter, you did it," she said. "But it's not over. There's one more thing you need to do. Meet me at the cemetery. There's something you need to see." The cemetery. The place where Emily was buried. I felt a chill settle in my bones. I didn't want to go, but I knew I had to. With the locket and dagger still in hand, I grabbed my coat and headed out into the night. The wind had picked up, howling through the trees, adding an eerie soundtrack to my journey. The cemetery gates loomed ahead, their iron bars twisted and ancient. I pushed them open with a creak, the sound echoing through the silent graves. As I walked among the headstones, the moon cast long shadows, making the place feel even more otherworldly. I approached Emily's grave, my heart heavy with a mix of hope and dread. Standing by her headstone was a figure, faint and glowing with a pale light. It was Emily, or at least a spectral version of her. She looked just as she did in life, her eyes filled with sorrow and longing. "Emily," I whispered, tears welling up in my eyes. Is it really you? Yes, Peter, she replied, her voice barely more than a whisper. I've been trapped, unable to move on. The spirit that haunted our family kept me here. But now, you have the power to set me free. How? I asked, desperate to help her. The locket and the dagger, she explained. Together, they can sever the ties that bind me to this world. You need to place the locket on my grave and use the dagger to complete the ritual. It will break the curse for good. My hands trembled as I placed the locket on her headstone. Emily's form flickered, a look of gratitude in her eyes. I held the dagger, the weight of it feeling heavier than ever. Will this hurt you? I asked, fear gripping me. No, she assured me. It will finally bring me peace. And you too, Peter. You can live your life free of this darkness. Taking a deep breath, I followed her instructions. The ritual was simple, yet each step felt monumental. As I completed the final part, a gust of wind swept through the cemetery, extinguishing the spectral glow around Emily. Her form began to dissolve, a serene smile on her face. Thank you, Peter, she said, her voice fading. I'll always love you. I love you too, I whispered, my heart breaking as she disappeared completely. The air grew still, a profound silence settling over the cemetery. For the first time in years, I felt a sense of peace. But just as I turned to leave, the ground beneath me trembled. A cold, malevolent laughter echoed through the cemetery, chilling me to the core. The spirit hadn't been vanquished. It had only been weakened. You think you can get rid of me that easily? The voice taunted. I am eternal. And now, I have you. The ground split open, and a dark, shadowy figure emerged, more terrifying than before. I clutched the dagger, but its power seemed diminished. The spirit advanced, its eyes glowing with malice. My heart pounded in my chest, every instinct screaming at me to run, but there was nowhere to go. Just as the spirit lunged at me, a blinding light filled the cemetery. Emily's form reappeared, brighter and more powerful. She stood between me and the spirit, her presence radiating strength and love. Leave him alone, she commanded, her voice unwavering. The spirit recoiled, its form flickering. You can't protect him forever, it hissed. I don't need to, she replied. Peter is stronger than you know. Our love is stronger than your hatred. With a final, desperate scream, the spirit dissolved into the night, its power broken. The light around Emily faded, and she turned to me one last time. Live your life, Peter. Be happy. And then she was gone, leaving me alone in the quiet cemetery. I stood there, the weight of the past lifting from my shoulders. Emily's love had saved me, and I knew I had to honor her by living the life she wanted for me. As I walked away, the first light of dawn began to break over the horizon, a new beginning after the long, dark night. The voice on the other end of the phone had sounded exactly like my wife, and it had led me to the truth. Emily was gone, but her love and strength would always be with me. The curse was broken, and I was finally free. Subscribe for more true scary stories. Story 2. The Lullaby of the Attic. The first time I heard it, I was drifting on the edge of sleep. The soft, melodic notes of a lullaby floated down from the attic, barely audible but impossible to ignore. I sat up in bed, straining to catch the tune, but it faded into the silence of the night. It was almost as if it had never been there at all. The house, a Victorian relic inherited from my grandparents, had always had its quirks, but this was different. I told myself it was just my imagination, a trick of the wind perhaps, and turned over to sleep. The following night, however, the lullaby returned. This time, it was clearer, each note distinct and haunting. I lay in bed, my heart pounding, as the melody played on. It was beautiful yet unnerving, like a sweet whisper with a dark undertone. The days passed in a blur, each night punctuated by the eerie lullaby. I tried to ignore it, convincing myself it was nothing, but curiosity gnawed at me. One evening, after another sleepless night, I decided to confront the source. Clad in my robe, I climbed the narrow staircase to the attic, each step creaking under my weight. The air grew colder with each step, and the melody grew louder. As I reached the attic door, the music stopped abruptly. I hesitated, my hand hovering over the doorknob. Steeling myself, I opened the door slowly, half expecting to see someone there. The attic was empty, filled only with dusty old furniture and cobwebs. In the center of the room sat an old music box, ornate and worn with age. It was open, but silent. I approached the music box cautiously, the hairs on the back of my neck standing on end. It was intricately carved, depicting scenes of children playing and angels watching over them. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. I reached out to close the lid, but as I touched it, the lid slammed shut on its own, and the room plunged into silence. My breath caught in my throat. I stumbled back, nearly tripping over an old trunk. The attic felt oppressive, the darkness almost tangible. I hurried back down the stairs, my heart racing. I didn't sleep at all that night, the silence more unnerving than the lullaby. The next day, I tried to rationalize what I had seen. Old houses made noises, maybe the music box had a faulty mechanism. But deep down, I knew there was more to it. The lullaby returned that night, louder and more insistent. It was as if it was calling to me, demanding my attention. Determined to find answers, I began researching the history of the house. I discovered that it had been built in the late 1800s by a wealthy family, the Bentleys. They had a young daughter, Laura, who loved to play her music box. She had died tragically at a young age, and the family left the house soon after. The music box had remained, a relic of a happier time. The pieces began to fall into place. The lullaby was Laura's, a fragment of her lingering spirit. The thought both saddened and terrified me. What did she want? Why was she reaching out to me? That night, I made a decision. I would confront Laura and find out what she needed to rest in peace. Armed with what little courage I had, I prepared for the night. I laid out candles, hoping their soft glow would provide some comfort against the oppressive darkness. I waited for the lullaby, my heart thumping in anticipation. When the first notes floated down from the attic, I forced myself to move. The stairs felt longer this time, each step echoing ominously. I reached the attic door and hesitated, gathering my resolve. The music was clearer now, almost inviting. I pushed the door open, and the lullaby stopped mid-note. The silence was deafening. "Laura?" I called out softly, feeling foolish. "Laura Bentley?" For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the music box lid creaked open, and the melody resumed, more melancholic than before. I approached the music box, my heart pounding. "Laura, if you're here, please, I just want to help." A cold breeze swept through the attic, ruffling my hair. I shivered, wrapping my arms around myself. The shadows seemed to dance in the candlelight, creating eerie patterns on the walls. As I reached out to the music box, a soft, childlike voice echoed in the room. "Help me." I froze, my hand inches from the music box. "What do you need, Laura?" I whispered, my voice trembling. "Find the truth," the voice replied, barely audible over the lullaby. The temperature dropped further, and I could see my breath misting in the air. Determined to help, I began searching the attic. I sifted through old trunks, uncovering toys, clothes, and family heirlooms. Finally, in a dusty corner, I found a small, ornate box. Inside was a faded photograph of a young girl, her eyes sad and haunting. It was Laura. As I held the photo, the voice returned. "He took me." "Who took you, Laura?" I asked, my heart aching for the lost child. "The dark man," she replied, her voice trembling with fear. I felt a chill run down my spine. "Who is he, Laura? Where can I find him?" There was no answer. The music box lid slammed shut, and the lullaby stopped. The attic fell silent, the darkness pressing in on me. I hurried downstairs, clutching the photograph. Laura's story was becoming clearer, but I needed more answers. The next day, I visited the local library, searching for any records on the Bentleys. I found an old newspaper article about Laura's disappearance. It mentioned a man named Charles Worthington, a close friend of the family who had vanished shortly after Laura. He was suspected of foul play but was never found. My heart raced as I read the article. Charles Worthington was the dark man. I had to find out what happened to him and Laura. That night, as the lullaby began once more, I steeled myself for another visit to the attic. I had to confront Laura and learn the truth. The attic felt colder than ever as I ascended the stairs, the eerie lullaby guiding my steps. This time, I carried the photograph of Laura with me, hoping it would help her communicate more clearly. When I opened the door, the music box was already playing, its melody mournful and haunting. "Laura, I found your photograph," I said softly, holding it up. "I know about Charles Worthington. Can you tell me more about him?" The air grew thick with tension, and the candle flames flickered wildly. The voice returned, barely a whisper. "He was cruel. Did he hurt you?" I asked, my voice breaking. "Yes," came the chilling reply. "He trapped me." My blood ran cold. "Where did he trap you, Laura? How can I help you?" The shadows in the attic seemed to deepen, and the temperature dropped further. "Below the house," she whispered. "Find the door." A sense of urgency gripped me. I thanked Laura and hurried downstairs, her words echoing in my mind. Below the house. I had never noticed a basement door, but then again, I had never looked. I searched every corner of the ground floor, finally discovering a small, hidden door behind an old bookshelf in the study. It was locked, but I found an old, rusty key in a nearby drawer. With a deep breath, I unlocked the door and descended into the darkness. The air was damp and musty, and the stairs creaked under my weight. At the bottom, I found a small, dimly lit room. In the center was a large, wooden chest. My hands trembled as I opened it, revealing a collection of children's toys, old clothes, and a diary. I picked up the diary, its leather cover cracked and worn. It was Laura's. As I read through the pages, my heart ached for the little girl who had suffered so much. Charles Worthington had been obsessed with Laura, convinced she was the key to some dark ritual. He had taken her to this basement, intending to use her for his twisted purposes. Suddenly, I heard a creak behind me. I spun around, my heart pounding. The shadows in the corner of the room seemed to coalesce, forming a dark, menacing figure. It was Charles Worthington, his eyes burning with malevolence. "You should not have come here," he hissed, his voice like nails on a chalkboard. I backed away, clutching the diary to my chest. "I know what you did to Laura," I said, my voice shaking. "I'm going to set her free." He laughed, a cold, hollow sound that sent shivers down my spine. "You think you can stop me? She is mine." With a surge of adrenaline, I turned and ran up the stairs, slamming the door behind me. I knew I had to destroy the music box. It was the key to freeing Laura's spirit. As I reached the attic, I grabbed the music box and hurled it to the floor. It shattered, the melody cutting off abruptly. The air in the attic grew still, and for a moment, I thought it was over. But then, a cold, oppressive presence filled the room. The dark figure of Charles Worthington loomed before me, his eyes glowing with rage. "You cannot escape," he snarled, advancing toward me. I stumbled back, my mind racing. Laura's voice echoed in my head. "Find the door." There was another door, one I hadn't found yet. Desperation drove me as I searched the attic, finally discovering a small, hidden panel in the wall. I pushed it open and climbed through, finding myself in a narrow, stone passageway. The stone passageway was damp and cold, the air thick with the scent of earth and decay. My footsteps echoed ominously as I moved forward, the narrow walls pressing in on me. Behind me, I could hear the angry growls of Charles Worthington, his presence like a dark cloud chasing me down the corridor. The passage seemed endless, twisting and turning in unexpected ways, but I pressed on, driven by the need to free Laura's spirit. Finally, I emerged into a small, circular chamber lit by the eerie glow of a single candle. In the center stood an altar, covered in dark stains and strange symbols. This was the heart of Charles's dark ritual, the place where he had trapped Laura's spirit. As I approached the altar, the temperature dropped further, and I could see my breath in the cold air. "Laura," I whispered, holding the photograph close. "I'm here. Show me what to do." The air stirred, and Laura's voice, faint but determined, filled the chamber. "Destroy the altar." I looked around for something to use, spotting a heavy, iron candlestick on a nearby shelf. Gripping it tightly, I raised it above my head and brought it crashing down on the altar. The stone cracked, and a burst of cold air swept through the chamber. I struck again and again, the sound of the altar breaking mingling with Charles's enraged screams. "You will not win," he bellowed, his shadowy form appearing at the entrance to the chamber. "She is mine." Ignoring his threats, I continued to smash the altar until it was nothing but rubble. As the final piece broke, a blinding light filled the chamber, and Charles's form disintegrated into nothingness. The oppressive darkness lifted, replaced by a sense of peace and light. "Thank you," Laura's voice whispered, filled with gratitude. "I'm free." Tears filled my eyes as the light faded, leaving me alone in the chamber. The music box, the photographs, the diary, everything connected to Laura and Charles was gone, vanished with the darkness. I knew that Laura's spirit had finally found rest. Exhausted and relieved, I made my way back through the passageway and up to the attic. The house felt different, lighter, as if a great weight had been lifted. I took one last look around the attic, now just an ordinary, dusty room, and smiled. Laura was free, and the nightmare was over. As I descended the stairs, I felt a sense of closure. I had done what I could to help Laura, and in doing so, I had found a strength within myself I never knew existed. The house was no longer haunted, and the eerie lullaby would never play again. Just as I was about to leave the house, I heard a faint, familiar melody. My heart skipped a beat as I turned, but there was no music box, no haunting figure. The sound was coming from my own mind, a lingering echo of the past. I took a deep breath and stepped outside, feeling the warm sunlight on my face. Laura was gone, but her story would stay with me forever, a reminder of the darkness that lurks in the shadows and the light that can overcome it. The end. Subscribe for more. Thanks for watching.